The clinking of silverware against fine china was the only sound I could hear. It was a sharp, crystalline noise that seemed to echo in the sudden, cavernous silence that had fallen over our table. Outside the grand windows of Chateau Lumiere, the city lights of Chicago sparkled like a blanket of scattered diamonds, oblivious. But inside, at this table, in this moment, my world had stopped spinning. It had simply shattered. The envelope was heavy in my hands, gold-leafed, expensive paper that probably cost more than my last 3 pairs of work shoes combined. It felt cold, impossibly cold, despite the warmth of the candlelit restaurant. The scent of my mother's expensive French perfume, a scent I used to associate with comfort, now seemed cloying, suffocating, the smell of betrayal. Across the table, my mother, Eleanor, watched me with an expression of serene finality, like a queen who had just passed a necessary but unpleasant sentence. The diamonds on her wrist caught the candlelight, sending little fractured rainbows dancing on the tablecloth, mocking me with their brilliance. My father, Richard, wouldn't meet my eyes. He was intensely focused on the swirling red of his Cabernet, as if it held all the answers to the universe. And next to him, my sister, Victoria, had her phone held up, not even pretending to be discreet. The little red light was on. She was recording this for their entertainment. "Well, go on, Brooke," my mother prompted, her voice smooth as silk but laced with steel. "Open it. It's a gift." A gift? For my 31st birthday? I looked around the table. My Aunt Carol, my Uncle Thomas, even my cousin Jennifer, they had all been invited tonight. Witnesses. They were all looking at me, a mixture of pity and morbid curiosity in their eyes. Aunt Carol leaned over to my mother and whispered, loud enough for me to hear, "It's for the best, Eleanor. Some children are just disappointments." My uncle nodded in solemn agreement. This wasn't just my parents' decision. It was a family verdict. They were here for the show. My fingers, strangely numb, fumbled with the seal. The paper inside was thick, creamy, and embossed with the letterhead of a prestigious law firm. The words, typed in a severe, unforgiving font, seemed to jump out at me, each one a separate stinging blow. "We, the Harrison family, do hereby formally disown Gianna Marie Thompson, effective immediately." Gianna. They hadn't even used my chosen name, Brooke, for years. To them, I would always be the Gianna they felt they had failed to shape in their image. The document went on, full of legal jargon about inheritance, assets, and the severing of all familial ties. It was a declaration of my non-existence in their world, a legal document stating that I was, to them, nothing. I remembered a different birthday, my 16th. Victoria had gotten a brand new convertible. I had received a savings bond for my college fund with a lecture about how I'd need to be more responsible for my own future than she would. Even then, the lines were drawn. "This is from all of us," my mother announced to the table, raising her glass slightly. Her voice carried a tone of magnanimous closure. "We believe this is for the best. It will finally free Brooke to live the life she has chosen without the burden of our family's expectations." The burden. The word hung in the air, thick and suffocating. The burden of their expectations wasn't what had crushed me for 31 years. It was the burden of their disappointment. The burden of their constant, unending financial needs disguised as family emergencies. The burden of being their ATM, their convenient scapegoat, their permanent before picture to Victoria's glorious after. Victoria finally lowered her phone, a smug little smile playing on her lips. "Don't look so shocked, Brooke. It's not like you were ever really one of us." Something inside me, something that had been stretched taut for years, didn't break. It simply went still. The frantic, desperate need to please them, to earn their love, to finally be enough, it just vanished. In its place was a profound, chilling silence. The storm was over, and I had survived. I folded the papers neatly, deliberately, and slid them back into the golden envelope. I looked up, and for the first time, I think I truly saw them, not as my family, but as they were. 3 deeply insecure people who could only feel tall by making me feel small. I offered them a small, calm smile. "Thank you," I said, my voice even, devoid of the tears they were so clearly anticipating. This simplifies things. I placed the envelope in my purse, stood up, and smoothed down my simple black dress. "Happy birthday to me," I whispered to myself. I turned and walked away from the table, away from the stunned silence and the confused, angry face of my sister, who had just realized she wasn't going to get the dramatic breakdown she had hoped to capture on video. As I walked out of Chateau Lumiere and into the cool night air, they had no idea what I'd already done. They had no idea that their grand act of cutting me off was about 2 weeks too late. They thought they were kicking me out. In reality, they had just opened the door to the cage I had already unlocked. They had no idea about the contract sitting in my apartment, the one with a salary that dwarfed my father's, signed and sealed with the CEO of the Grand Plaza Hotels. Thank you for being here and listening to my story. Please let me know what city you're watching from in the comments below. The taxi ride home was quiet. The city blurred past the window, a watercolor of neon and streetlight, but I wasn't really seeing it. I wasn't crying. That's what surprised me the most. For years, I had rehearsed this moment in my nightmares, and in every version, I was a wreck, sobbing, begging, pleading for them to reconsider. But the reality was quiet. It wasn't a snap in the angry, explosive sense. It was more like a key turning in a lock. A soft, clean, metallic click. The door to that desperate, trying too hard part of myself had just been shut and bolted forever. The part that believed if I just worked harder, gave more, and shrank myself smaller, they would finally see me. That part of me was gone. Leaning my head against the cool glass of the window, the flashbacks started. Not as a torrent of grief, but as a clinical review of evidence. It was as if I was an auditor examining the accounts of my own life. The memory of Victoria's Ibiza debt and my parents' Mediterranean cruise were fresh, but my mind dredged up another, even more telling incident. Victoria's law school graduation party. It was a few years back. My parents decided they wanted to throw her a lavish party at their home for over 100 people. But they didn't want to hire a party planner. "Why would we?" my mother had said, looking at me as if the answer was obvious, "when we have you?" So I did it. For 2 months, I used every spare moment of my time, every bit of my professional expertise, for free. I designed the invitations. I negotiated with caterers and florists, using my industry connections to get them discounts. I planned the menu, the decor, the music. I created a minute-by-minute schedule for the event. It was a full-time job on top of my actual full-time job. I did it all because I thought, this time they'll see my value. They'll see what I'm capable of. The day of the party, I was there from dawn until midnight. I managed the setup, directed the staff, and smoothed over every little crisis that arose. When the party started, I was still running around, making sure everything was perfect. At one point, my mother's friend, Mrs. Henderson, stopped me. "The food is just divine," she gushed. "You must give me the name of your event planner. She's just fabulous." Before I could answer, my mother glided over, placing a hand on my arm. "Oh, this is just my other daughter, Brooke," she said, her voice bright and dismissive. "She's helping out tonight." She then turned her back to me and led Mrs. Henderson away, leaving me standing there feeling like nothing more than the hired help. Later that night, I overheard my father telling one of his business partners, "Victoria's the brains of the family. Brooke, well, she's good at things like this. Things like this." Like I was a useful appliance. At the end of the night, after the last guest had left and I was helping the actual hired staff clear away the debris, Victoria came up to me. She didn't say thank you. She handed me a sticky champagne glass. "Can you take care of this?" she asked, before turning to her friends to discuss where they were going for the after party. That was receipt number 3, a big one. The realization that even when I gave them my professional best, they would never see it as anything more than my duty. My skills were not a talent to be respected, but a resource to be exploited. The taxi pulled up to my modest apartment building. I paid the driver, and as I walked up the steps, I felt lighter. The weight of their expectations, their condescension, their constant draining neediness, it was gone. They thought they had punished me, but they had liberated me. Inside my apartment, I didn't turn on the lights. I walked over to the window that overlooked a quiet, tree-lined street. It wasn't the glittering view from Chateau Lumiere, but it was mine. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to an email I had saved, an email I had read at least 100 times in the last 2 weeks. It was from Marcus Sterling, the CEO of Grand Plaza Hotels. The subject line was simple, an offer. I opened it and read the last line again. "We believe you are a singular talent, Ms. Thompson, and we would be honored to have you lead our guest experience division." I took a deep breath. They had drawn a line in the sand tonight. They had cast me out. But they were wrong about one thing. I wasn't falling from grace. I was stepping onto a stage they couldn't even imagine, and the show was just about to begin. To understand how I got that email, you have to understand what happened 3 months before my ill-fated birthday dinner. You have to understand the night of Mr. Tanaka. I was working as the head hostess at Meridian, a 2 Michelin star restaurant where the clientele was as demanding as the tasting menu was expensive. My family, of course, referred to my job as still taking reservations. They had no concept of the logistics, the diplomacy, and the crisis management that went into running the floor of a place like Meridian. To them, my prestigious hospitality management degree from Northwestern was a joke. To me, it was my entire toolkit. That night, a storm had rolled over Chicago, snarling traffic and fraying nerves. We were overbooked, understaffed, and a VIP party was running an hour late. It was a pressure cooker, and I was right in the middle of it. My manager, Daniel, a man who saw more in me than my own family ever had, gave me a look of weary trust. "You've got this, Brooke," he said, before rushing off to deal with a crisis in the kitchen. Daniel was the one who had promoted me, who had encouraged me to take advanced sommelier courses, who saw my talent not as a useful party trick, but as a serious professional skill. He was more of a mentor than my own father had ever been. Then Mr. Tanaka arrived. He was the CEO of a Japanese tech conglomerate, a notorious perfectionist, and he was in town to close a massive deal. He had a reservation for a private booth, the most coveted table in the restaurant, for a dinner that would seal the deal. Except, due to a booking error made by a new hostess, his booth had been given away 20 minutes prior. When I delivered the news, his face went from calm to thunderous in a fraction of a second. His associate began speaking in rapid, angry Japanese. It was a disaster. A potential multi-million-dollar client for our restaurant group was about to walk out and write a review that would scorch our reputation. This was the kind of moment where my life had trained me to excel. While everyone else saw a crisis, I saw a puzzle. I took a steadying breath. "Yamamoto-sama," I began, in fluent Japanese, bowing slightly. "I am deeply, personally sorry for this egregious error. It is unacceptable, and I take full responsibility." His eyes widened in surprise. The flow of angry words from his associate stopped mid-sentence. I continued in Japanese, my tone respectful but confident. "While the booth you requested is unfortunately occupied, I have taken the liberty of preparing the chef's private tasting room for you. It is far more exclusive, completely soundproof for your confidential discussion, and the chef has offered to personally curate a menu for you and your guests, paired with our rarest steaks. It would be my honor to escort you there." I hadn't actually done any of that yet. But I knew our chef and I knew our inventory. It was a calculated risk. For a moment, Mr. Tanaka just stared at me. Then, a slow nod. "Very well," he said in English. "Show me." The rest of the evening was a blur of high-stakes coordination. I managed to get the chef on board, rearranged 2 other parties to free up staff, and personally oversaw every detail of Mr. Tanaka's service. By the end of the night, he wasn't just mollified, he was impressed. As he left, he handed me his card. "If you ever tire of this place," he said, his voice holding a new respect, "you have a job in my organization." He ended up signing an exclusive corporate dining contract with Meridian worth $2 million. Daniel was ecstatic. "Brooke, you didn't just save the night," he told me. "You literally made our year." What I didn't know was that there was someone else watching the whole drama unfold, a man sitting alone at the bar, nursing a glass of whiskey. He had a quiet, observant air about him, and he had seen the whole thing, the initial fury, my calm intervention, and the satisfied look on Mr. Tanaka's face as he left. That man was Marcus Sterling. 2 days later, the email landed in my inbox. It was from his executive assistant requesting a confidential conversation regarding a potential opportunity at Grand Plaza Hotels, the multi-billion-dollar luxury hospitality empire he ran. My heart hammered against my ribs as I read it. This was the big leagues. This was the kind of job people like me dreamed about, but never thought they'd actually get. What followed were 3 months of the most intense, secretive interviews of my life. There were 5 rounds in total. I met with VPs, department heads, and board members. I had to create a full presentation on how I would revamp their customer loyalty program. I had to role-play scenarios that made the Mr. Tanaka incident look like child's play. One interviewer, a stern-faced woman who ran operations, tried to trip me up, asking me how I would handle a hypothetical divorce between 2 of our highest-spending clients who were both demanding the same penthouse suite for the same weekend. I had to navigate the legal and emotional minefield with grace. I did all of this in secret. I told my family I was taking a night class. I told them I was dating someone who lived out of town. I used every excuse I could think of to explain my strange hours and frequent trips to the Grand Plaza headquarters. They never asked too many questions. They were too wrapped up in their own worlds to notice the quiet revolution happening in mine. Victoria was busy planning a lavish ski trip to Aspen. My mother was chairing another self-important charity gala committee. My father was worried about his golf handicap. The final interview was with Marcus Sterling himself. We sat in his penthouse office on the 90th floor, overlooking the entirety of Chicago. He wasn't what I expected. There was no arrogance, only a sharp, penetrating intelligence. He leaned forward. "Brooke," he said, his voice calm, "I can teach business acumen. I can teach corporate strategy. What I can't teach is what you did that night at Meridian. That was instinct. That was grace under fire. That is the heart of hospitality." He slid a folder across the polished mahogany desk. "This is our offer. Director of Guest Experience. You'll be in charge of a team of 25, overseeing the entire guest journey for our North American properties." I opened the folder. The numbers I saw made me feel dizzy. A base salary of $285,000, a signing bonus, and $500,000 in company stock. It was more money than I had ever imagined making. It was freedom. "I have one question," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Why me? There must be hundreds of candidates with more experience." Marcus smiled. "There were. We interviewed them. They all knew how to manage a hotel. You, Miss Thompson, know how to manage people. You know how to turn a disaster into a triumph. I'm not hiring you for your resume. I'm hiring you for your character." I signed the contract a week before my birthday. My start date was March 1st. As I walked out of that building, contract in hand, I felt a sense of power I had never known. The secret was a warm, glowing coal inside my chest. All I had to do was wait for the right moment to let it burn. I had no idea that my own family would provide the perfect, most dramatic stage for the reveal. March 1st arrived, cold and clear. It was my first day at Grand Plaza, just 2 days after the disastrous birthday dinner. As I walked into the gleaming, marble-floored lobby of the corporate headquarters, I felt like I was shedding an old skin. The simple black dress from the restaurant had been replaced by a sharp, tailored suit. The apologetic slump in my shoulders was gone, replaced by a straight-backed confidence. No one here knew me as the waitress or Victoria's less successful sister. Here, I was Ms. Thompson, the new director. My office was on the 47th floor. It was a corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of Lake Michigan. It was bigger than my entire apartment. On the desk, a welcome basket sat next to a brand-new laptop and a stack of briefing documents. This was my new reality. That first week was a strange mix of exhilarating and terrifying. I had to fight off waves of imposter syndrome. I'd be sitting in a boardroom with VPs who managed billion-dollar budgets, and a little voice in my head would whisper, "You're just a hostess. You don't belong here." But then I would remember Marcus's words, "I'm hiring you for your character." I would take a deep breath, straighten my spine, and speak. My first team meeting was nerve-wracking. 25 pairs of eyes, all experienced professionals, were looking at me, their new boss. I didn't try to pretend I knew everything. I started by being honest. "I know many of you have been with this company for years," I said. "I'm not here to throw out everything that works. I'm here to listen, to learn from you, and to help build on your success." I then went around the room and asked each person to tell me about their biggest challenge and their proudest accomplishment. I took notes. I listened. By the end of the meeting, the skepticism in the room had been replaced by a cautious optimism. I had earned a sliver of their respect. Even as I was building my new future, I was systematically organizing my past. This was my own private gathering of receipts. In the evenings, after long days at the office, I would sit down and create a file, a digital one. It wasn't for revenge, not in the petty sense. It was for clarity. It was my own personal declaration of independence. I went through years of text messages. I screenshotted every one from Victoria that started with, "Hey, I'm in a huge jam," followed by a request for money. I found the ones from my mother that said, "Your father is so stressed, a weekend at the spa would do him wonders," followed by her Venmo handle. I compiled a spreadsheet. On one side, the date and amount of money I had given them. On the other, a note about the emergency it was for. The total was staggering. It was well over $50,000. Money that I now realized wasn't given out of love, but extracted through manipulation. Then I went through my emails. I found the one from my father, forwarding me a job posting for a paralegal position at his company's regional office. "I know it's a step down for you," he'd written, "but at least it's a real career, Gianna." This was when I was already the head concierge at a 5-star hotel. I saved it. I found the email chain where I tried to explain why I couldn't make it to my mother's charity luncheon because I couldn't get the time off work. Her reply was icy. I see. Well, I suppose we all have our priorities. Mrs. Henderson was asking after you. I'll just have to tell her you were busy. The subtext was clear. You are embarrassing me. I saved that one too. Each email, each text, each memory was a brick in the wall I was building around myself. Not a wall to keep the world out, but a fortress to protect my own worth. These were the invisible receipts, the evidence of 1,000 tiny cuts that had nearly bled me dry of my self-esteem. My first major assignment at Grand Plaza was a formidable one. I was tasked with planning and executing the annual Excellence in Hospitality Awards, a massive gala event that Grand Plaza was hosting in 2 weeks, on March 15th. It was the biggest night in the industry, attended by every hotel CEO, restaurateur, and travel mogul in the country. When I saw the guest list, my blood ran cold for a second. There, on the committee list, was my mother's name, Eleanor Harrison, and as a committee member, she had a reserved table for 10, front and center. Of course, it was her favorite event of the year, the pinnacle of her social calendar. For a moment, panic flickered inside me. Should I tell Mr. Sterling? Should I ask to be taken off the project? Then the cold, clear calm from the taxi ride returned. No, I would do my job. And I would do it better than anyone ever had. This wasn't a confrontation to be feared. It was an opportunity to show them and the world exactly who I was, unflinchingly, on my own terms. My family was planning to attend a party. They had no idea I was the one who was setting the stage. The 2 weeks leading up to the awards gala passed in a blur of focused, intense work. I barely slept. I lived on coffee and adrenaline. I coordinated with vendors, finalized menus, reviewed seating charts, and prepped the entire event stuff. I was in my element, and for the first time, I felt the thrill of using my skills on a grand scale. As I worked, the irony was a constant, bitter companion. Here I was, meticulously arranging the details for an event that was the highlight of my mother's social world. I approved the floral arrangements I knew she would adore. I selected the vintage of champagne I knew my father preferred. I was a ghost, orchestrating their perfect evening, all while being completely invisible to them. Meanwhile, in their own universe, the Harrison family was blissfully, arrogantly unaware. They were preparing for the gala as if it were the Oscars. My mother was the most excited. She called me once during that time. I almost didn't answer, but some morbid curiosity made me pick up. "Gianna," she began, not even bothering to ask how I was, "I'm just calling to let you know that we won't be able to see you for a while. The social season is just so demanding, and the Excellence in Hospitality Awards are next week. I'm on the host committee, you know." "I know, Mom," I said, my voice flat. I was looking at the master seating chart on my computer screen at that very moment, her name glaring at me from table 1. "It's just a shame you can't be there," she continued, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "It's such a networking opportunity. You could meet people who could get you a real job, but I suppose someone has to serve the canapes." She laughed, a light, tinkling sound that used to make my stomach clench. Now it just sounded hollow. "Have a good time, Mom," I said, and hung up before she could reply. Victoria, naturally, was even worse. Her social media became a countdown to the event. She posted pictures of her final dress fitting, a shimmering, backless gown that cost more than my rent for 6 months. The caption read, "Final fitting for the big night. So excited to hobnob with the industry's best and brightest. Hashtag Gala Life, exclusive, you can't sit with us." The day before the event, she sent me a text. It was a selfie of her and my mother at a spa, face masks on, champagne glasses in hand. The text underneath read, Getting prepped for the awards. You should try to get a shift at the hotel bar. You might catch a glimpse of us. A few hours later, another text from her. Seriously though, are you working? I can get you a pass to the service corridors if you want. I stared at the text, the sheer, unadulterated cruelty of it. A year ago, it would have shattered me. It would have sent me into a spiral of shame and inadequacy. But now, it was just another receipt for the file. I didn't reply. I just screenshotted it and went back to approving the lighting design for the ballroom. They were so busy looking down on me, they never thought to look up and see who was running the show. Their hubris was a blinding light, and they were walking straight towards a cliff. The night of the gala, the Grand Plaza Ballroom was transformed. It was a sea of glittering chandeliers, cascading floral arrangements, and elegantly dressed people. The air buzzed with power and influence. I was in the wings, just off stage, with a headset on, running the final checks. From my vantage point, I could see the whole room. I watched my family make their grand entrance. It was like watching a scene from a movie I had seen 100 times before. My father, puffed up in his tuxedo, looking important. My mother, regal in a sapphire gown, greeting everyone with air kisses, a queen in her court. And Victoria, preening and posing for photographers at the step and repeat, soaking in the attention. I saw them through a new lens now, not with awe or envy, but with a kind of detached pity. Their entire world was a performance, and the applause they craved was so fleeting. They took their seats at table 1, right in front of the stage, the best seats in the house. They surveyed the room with an air of supreme ownership. Just before the program started, I got a text. It was from a number I didn't recognize at first. "Shine bright tonight, girl." Some people need to see the truth. I realized it was from Mrs. Davies, one of my mother's oldest friends from the charity circuit, a woman who had always been kind to me. She was sitting at their table. I looked out and caught her eye. She gave me a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. A small smile touched my lips. I had an ally in the room. The house lights dimmed. A hush fell over the crowd of 500 of the most powerful people in the industry. The show was about to begin. My family leaned forward in their seats, expectant and smug, ready to be entertained. They had absolutely no idea what was coming for them. Their world was about to be turned upside down, and they were sitting in the front row to watch it happen. The spotlight hit the center of the stage. The introductory music swelled and then faded. Marcus Sterling, a man who commanded the respect of everyone in that ballroom, walked to the podium. He exuded an effortless authority. "Good evening, everyone," he began, his voice warm and resonant, filling the vast space. "And welcome to the Excellence in Hospitality Awards. It is an honor to have you all here tonight at the Grand Plaza as we celebrate the very best our industry has to offer." He spoke for a few minutes about the future of hospitality, about innovation and service. I watched my family from the wings. They were captivated. My mother was nodding along, a self-satisfied smile on her face, as if Marcus were speaking directly to her. My father looked important by association. Victoria had her phone out again, no doubt capturing the moment for her followers. As I waited, my heart began to pound, a frantic drum against my ribs. This was it, the moment of truth. All the years of being overlooked, of being used, of being made to feel small, it all led to this. I wasn't even nervous about speaking. I was nervous about the aftermath. But a stronger feeling pushed the fear away. Resolve. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclamation. I was taking back my own story. "But tonight," Marcus continued, his tone shifting, becoming more personal, "I want to talk about the most crucial ingredient for success. It's not capital. It's not strategy. It is talent, true, singular talent, the kind of talent that can't be taught in a business school. The kind of talent that turns a customer into a loyalist and a crisis into an opportunity. He paused, letting his words hang in the air. The room was silent. To truly redefine excellence, my company has been on a search for a leader who embodies the spirit. We weren't looking for a conventional resume. We were looking for something more. We were looking for grace under pressure, for ingenuity, for a person who understands that service is not about servitude, but about human connection. I could see my mother preening. She probably thought he was talking about her work on the committee. She subtly adjusted her diamond necklace, a small gesture of self-congratulation. "We searched everywhere for this person," Marcus said, his eyes scanning the crowd. "And we found her in the most unexpected of places. We found her quietly performing miracles on the front lines of this industry. It is my immense honor and privilege to introduce you to the woman who will be leading our entire guest experience division into the future. Please join me in welcoming our new Director of Guest Experience for Grand Plaza Hotels, Miss Brooke Thompson." The name hit the room like a shockwave. Brooke Thompson. For a split second, there was confusion, a ripple of whispers. Then the spotlight swiveled from the podium, cut through the darkness, and landed squarely on me as I stepped out from the wings. The reaction at table 1 was instantaneous and cinematic. My mother's wineglass, halfway to her lips, slipped from her fingers. It hit the table with a sharp crack and then shattered on the floor, red wine bleeding across the white tablecloth like a mortal wound. Her face went pale, a ghostly white that made her red lipstick look garish and clownish. My father's jaw literally dropped. His mouth hung open in a silent, comical O of disbelief, his face a mask of utter confusion. Victoria's phone clattered from her hand onto her plate, splashing balsamic vinaigrette all over her designer gown. Her face, which moments before had been a smug portrait of superiority, was now a twisted mess of shock, fury, and dawning horror. Every head in that ballroom turned, first to me, standing on the stage in my simple but elegant navy blue sheath dress, a small, calm smile on my face. And then, as if pulled by a magnetic force, every gaze shifted to table 1, to the family of the woman on stage who were now frozen in a tableau of public humiliation. I could see the dawning comprehension on the faces of the people around them, the quick, gossipy whispers, the pitying looks. Their social standing was evaporating in real time, right before their eyes. I walked to the podium, the sound of polite, then thunderous applause filling my ears. I shook Marcus's hand. "Thank you, Marcus," I said into the microphone, my voice clear and steady. "It's an honor to be here." I looked out at the sea of faces, and my gaze drifted past them, past the hundreds of strangers, and settled for just a moment on my family. Our eyes met across the crowded room. In that single, silent exchange, everything was said. I saw their shock turn to rage, their confusion to pure, unadulterated hate, and I felt nothing but a quiet, profound sense of peace. I then delivered the speech I had been working on for 2 weeks. It wasn't about them. It was about my philosophy of service. It was about how true hospitality is about seeing the inherent worth in every single person, regardless of their title or their bank account. It was about dignity and respect. Every word was chosen with care, and every word, I knew, was a dagger to their pride. I spoke of integrity and hard work, of earning one's place through merit, not connections. As I finished, the ballroom erupted in a standing ovation. Business cards were already being passed to my new colleagues on my behalf. I had arrived. And in one fell swoop, on the grandest stage imaginable, I had exposed my family for what they were: small, petty people who had made the colossal mistake of underestimating the person they had tried so hard to keep down. The taste of victory was sweeter than I could have ever imagined. The rest of the gala was a blur of congratulations, handshakes, and promises of future meetings. I was surrounded by the very people my mother and sister had been so desperate to impress. They saw me. They respected me. I was one of them now. My family, on the other hand, had become social pariahs in the span of 5 minutes. They tried to slink out of the ballroom unnoticed, but it was impossible. The whispers followed them. The pitying, scornful looks burned into their backs. The stain of red wine on the white tablecloth at their empty table was a fitting monument to their public implosion. But Victoria wasn't going to go down without a fight. Her brand of poison was insidious. Humiliated and enraged, she did what she did best. She started a rumor. The next morning, as I was settling into my office, one of my new colleagues, a kind woman named Sarah from the marketing department, knocked on my door. "Can I talk to you for a second, Brooke?" she asked, her expression concerned. She closed the door behind her. "Listen, this is awkward, but I think you need to know. There's a story making the rounds that your appointment wasn't entirely based on merit. That you and Mr. Sterling," she trailed off, unable to say the words. It was a vile, classic, and deeply sexist lie, designed to strip me of my achievement and paint me as a fraud. I knew instantly it was Victoria's handiwork. She was trying to drag me down into the mud with her. For a moment, a flicker of the old fear returned. Could she ruin this for me? Could her lies tarnish my new beginning? But then I looked at Sarah's concerned face, a colleague who barely knew me, but was showing me more decency than my own sister ever had. I was no longer the girl who backed down. I had allies now. "Thank you for telling me, Sarah," I said, my voice steady. "I appreciate you looking out for me. And for the record, it's completely untrue." What Victoria didn't count on was 2 things. First, Marcus Sterling's reputation was unimpeachable. He was a devoted family man who had mentored dozens of men and women throughout his career. The rumor was so out of character that it lacked credibility from the start. Second, and far more damaging for her, was that she had been careless. In her blind rage, she had vented to a colleague at her law firm, Jonathan Price, bragging about how she was going to take that little witch down. She told him the whole fabricated story. Jonathan, a decent man who had long been disgusted by Victoria's arrogance, was appalled. He saw the rumor for what it was: a pathetic, unprofessional act of slander born from jealousy, and he reported it directly to the firm's managing partners. At the same time, another bomb was exploding in my mother's world. Mrs. Davies, the woman who had texted me her support, was not just a friend. She was a major donor to the Eleanor Foundation. The day after the gala, she called an emergency meeting of the board. She recounted in painstaking detail the years of Eleanor's condescending behavior towards me, culminating in the public cruelty she had witnessed firsthand. "This is not a woman who represents charity or compassion," Mrs. Davies stated to the board. "This is a woman obsessed with status, who was willing to publicly humiliate her own daughter. Her continued leadership is a liability to this foundation's integrity." The fallout was swift and brutal. It was a complete and utter collapse. They had built their entire lives on a fragile scaffolding of reputation and social standing, and I, the person they considered the weakest link, had just kicked it out from under them. Thank you for watching this far. You are a wonderful and patient person. Please like this video and comment the number 1 below to let me know you've journeyed with me to this point. Your support means the world to me. Now, comment 1 and let me tell you what happened next. The consequences came for them one by one, like a series of aftershocks following the earthquake of the gala. Each one was a direct result of their own actions, a karmic bill coming due. For my mother, the loss was the most public. The Eleanor Foundation Board, led by Mrs. Davies, voted unanimously to demand her resignation as chairwoman. The press release was polite but firm, citing a need for new leadership to align with the foundation's core values of compassion and integrity. Everyone in their social circle knew what that meant. She was disgraced. The invitations to other charity boards, galas, and exclusive events dried up overnight. She had built her identity on being a philanthropic socialite, and without that, she was just a woman in a large, empty house with a stained reputation. I heard later she tried to get custody in a public battle over a family heirloom with Aunt Carol and lost spectacularly, further cementing her image as petty and grasping. My father's downfall was quieter but just as devastating. He was a CFO, a man whose reputation was built on stability and good judgment. The story of what happened at the awards night spread through the corporate world like wildfire. It painted him not as a powerful executive, but as a foolish, cruel man who was completely out of touch. The board of directors at his company, Themes Corporation, grew concerned. This kind of personal drama reflected poorly on the company's image. 2 weeks after the gala, they held a private meeting with him. They didn't fire him. They did something much more subtle. They strongly suggested he take an early retirement package. The promotion he had been angling for was off the table. He was 62, pushed out of the career that had defined his entire existence. His golf buddies suddenly became scarce. His phone stopped ringing. But for Victoria, the reckoning was perhaps the most satisfying. The managing partners at her law firm, Baker & Associates, took Jonathan Price's report very seriously. Slandering a director at a major corporation like Grand Plaza, a potential client, was bad enough, but doing it out of personal, familial spite showed a shocking lack of judgment and ethics. It was a professional liability. They didn't fire her. They did something worse. They transferred her. She was reassigned to their satellite office in Cleveland, Ohio. In the world of corporate law, this was known as a career death sentence. She was being sent to corporate Siberia. All her dreams of making partner, of being a big-shot Chicago lawyer, were gone. She would be handling small-time cases in a city she despised. Her arrogance had cost her everything she had worked for. They tried to contact me, of course. At first, it was angry voicemails from Victoria, accusing me of ruining her life. Then came the tearful, manipulative calls from my mother, talking about how we're family and how I needed to fix this. Finally, a stilted, awkward email from my father, suggesting we should talk things through. I didn't answer any of them. I blocked their numbers. I set up a filter to send their emails directly to the trash. I had spent 31 years listening to them. I was done. One evening, about a month after the gala, there was a knock on my apartment door. I looked through the peephole and saw the 3 of them standing there, looking lost and diminished under the harsh hallway light. My family. They had come to beg. I didn't open the door. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, on my side of the door, in the safety and quiet of my own home. "Gianna, please." It was my mother's voice, strained and thin. "Open the door. We need to talk." "You're destroying us," Victoria shrieked, her voice cracking. "Is this what you wanted, to ruin your own family?" "We made a mistake, sweetheart," my father added, his voice heavy with a false sincerity I knew all too well. "Let us in. Let's fix this." I just stood there, listening to the words they had never once said to me before. "We need you. We made a mistake." But it wasn't love or remorse in their voices. It was desperation. They didn't miss me. They missed my utility. They missed the role I played in their lives. After a few more minutes of them knocking and calling my name, they finally gave up. I listened to their footsteps retreat down the hall, and in that moment, I knew I was truly free. Their power over me was gone. All that was left was silence. A year can change everything. The year that followed my liberation, as I came to call it, was one of incredible growth. At work, I thrived. My initiatives at Grand Plaza were a huge success, increasing guest satisfaction scores by 15% across the board. 6 months in, Marcus called me into his office and gave me a promotion, senior director, with another significant bump in my salary. I wasn't just a success. I was a rising star in the industry. With my newfound financial security, I did something I had given up on long ago. I bought my own home. It was a beautiful condo on Lakeshore Drive, with a wall of windows that overlooked the same lake I could see from my office. It was my sanctuary, paid for with my own hard work, filled with my own choices. But the most profound change wasn't professional or financial. It was personal. I started to build a life that was truly my own, surrounded by people who valued me for who I was, not what I could do for them. I reconnected with old friends, I made new ones, and I met someone. His name is Michael. He's a cardiothoracic surgeon at Northwestern Memorial, a kind, brilliant, and deeply compassionate man who thinks my job is fascinating. One evening, a few months after we started dating, he came home to find me looking stressed, poring over spreadsheets for a huge project. He didn't tell me to relax or to stop working. He just quietly went into the kitchen, made me a cup of tea, and placed it on my desk next to me. "You look like you're building an empire," he said with a smile, "just making sure the architect is hydrated." In that small, simple gesture, he showed me more respect and support than my family had in 3 decades. The first time I told him my full story, he didn't offer pity. He just listened, then took my hand and said, "It sounds like you saved yourself." "I'm so glad you did." That was when I knew. We are getting married in the fall. I also did something that would have made my mother cringe. I used a portion of my signing bonus to establish the Dixon Hospitality Scholarship at my alma mater, Northwestern. It's a fund dedicated to helping talented students from low-income backgrounds pursue their dreams in the industry. It was my way of taking the name they tried to strip me of and turning it into a force for good. I even started what I jokingly call the Professional Orphans Support Group. It's a small circle of friends, about 40 of us now, who have all had to distance ourselves from toxic family situations to save ourselves. We get together once a month, share stories, and remind each other that the family you choose can be far more powerful than the one you were born into. I don't know what happened to the Harrisons. I hear things sometimes through the grapevine. They had to sell the big house. Victoria is still in Cleveland. My mother, I'm told, rarely leaves the house. Their world shrank, just as mine was expanding. I don't feel anger towards them anymore. I don't feel much of anything. They are strangers I used to know. Sometimes I think about that night at the restaurant with the golden envelope and the cold, hard words. They thought they were writing the end of my story. They had no idea they were just giving me the pen to write my own beginning. Last week, a letter arrived. It had my mother's handwriting on it. I held it in my hand for a moment, feeling the weight of it. A year ago, it might have tempted me, but not anymore. I walked over to the paper shredder in my home office, and I fed the unopened envelope into it. I watched as it was turned into meaningless strips of paper. My life is my own now, and my philosophy is simple. Family isn't about the people you were born to. It's about the people who show up for you while you're becoming the person you were meant to be. Thank you so much for listening to my whole story. I truly appreciate you. Please comment the letter A so I know you are one of the special ones who made it all the way to the end. If you have any feelings you'd like to share about the story, please write them down. And please continue to click on other videos on our channel to enjoy more of our stories.